As I sit sandwiched amongst board games, miniatures, loads of plastic, metal, Napoleonic figures, Civil War figures, World War II figures, shelf after shelf of game, it's easy to lose sight of a number of things. One of those things that I've lost sight of and finally brought it upon myself to bring to your attention is a small book entitled The War Drama of the Eagles by Fraser. This was released in 1912 by New York E.P. Dutton and Company. Obviously out of print. Assuming you could find copies of this used on possibly eBay, Amazon, things like that. The full title is as such: The War Drama of the Eagles, Napoleon's Standard Bearer on the Battlefield in Victory and Defeat from Austerlitz to Waterloo, a record of hard fighting, heroism, and adventure. This was a hell of a find. The title is what grabbed me, of course, and as I thumbed through it, it is just that. It is a rather dramatic, yet presumably factual, as much as one can assume, account of the eagles that were presented to Napoleonic units, etc. It also recounts instances in which those eagles were lost. And of course, in the beginning of the book, it describes how the eagle came about, which is an interesting story and somewhat comical in and of itself. Something that I plan to relate to you at a later date, but it's just too interesting not to. As mentioned, there are a number of accounts in this thing as you flip through it, roughly 430 odd pages of anything and everything you would like to know as it relates to the eagle and the various things that happened to them. So, one thing in particular that I thought I would start with, at least for this video, I don't know how many of these I'll end up doing, but for this one in particular, I've decided to look at, and primarily because A, it's considered, though not necessarily proven, to be the first eagle that was lost by a Napoleonic unit, and this instance is depicted quite colorfully and playfully in a painting from 1884 entitled Capture of a French Regiment's Eagle by the Cavalry of the Russian Guard. That would be the painting that has been used for the title card of this video. This is a painting by Bogdan Willewalde, and if I could find additional information on that gentleman, I will relate it to you. There we go. The guy who painted this was of Russian nationality, born in, let's see, 1819, died in 1903. Born in St. Petersburg, was a Russian artist, academic, emeritus professor of military art, which sounds like a hell of a title, and a fellow of the Imperial Academy of Arts. The painting that you're witnessing is not the only thing he did. There are other things as well. If you go on the interwebs, you'll see any number of things that this gentleman has painted. But the painting in particular that is of interest to us is again the capture of a French regiment's eagle by the cavalry of the Russian Guard. And in this book, it goes into detail on that account. And let me go back here to Austerlitz and the index. I should have already had this queued up. And Eagle of the 24th, Eagle of the Fate of the Eagle of the 4th, pages 108 through 110. And then there's something else that's interesting as well. So let's see here. Let's start here a little bit just before this thing happened. Van Dam was in the middle of the move, and one of his brigades met with a sudden and unexpected disaster. Two battalions belonging to the 24th Light Infantry and the 4th of the Line, which is the battalion that concerns us, who fought side by side on the extreme left of Van Dam's command, were all but annihilated. As they were wheeling around, the Russian Imperial Guard came up, hurrying forward from the reserve, and set on them fiercely. It was just to the left of the village of Pratzen, as approached from the French side, on the farther side of the plateau. The Russian foot guards forced the 4th and the 24th Light Infantry back into some vineyards adjoining the village in disorder. The last to retire was the 1st Battalion of the 4th. They hardly gained the edge of the tract of vineyards when, without the least warning of their approach, coming upon their flank and unseen in the smoke and turmoil of the contest, a more formidable enemy still assailed them. The Russian cuirassiers of the Guard, 2,000 horsemen, troopers of the finest cavalry in the world, came down on them and charged them at a gallop on the flank. The Grand Duke Constantine, brother of the Tsar, in person led the cuirassiers. Disaster, hideous, overwhelming, crushing for the two hapless battalions, that of the 24th Light Infantry was, in like manner, caught just beyond cover, exposed in the open, was the instant result. They tried to form square at the last moment, but the cuirassiers were on them both before they could begin the evolution. Both battalions were practically hurled out of existence within 3 minutes. They were ridden down, trampled on by the huge Russian horses, and slashed to pieces mercilessly by the giant Russian troopers with their long straight swords. Both battalions lost their eagles. That of the 24th Light Infantry was picked up later on the field and restored to what was left of the ill-fated corps. The eagle of the 4th was carried off by the Russians and is now in the Kazan Cathedral at St. Petersburg. Yet it was lost with honor, bravely defended to the last. The eagle bearer was cut down. A lieutenant tried to get hold of the eagle and save it. He too was cut down. A private then snatched it from the dead officer's hands and was in the act of waving it on high when he in turn was sabred and fell. The Russians made prize of the trophy at once, and it was carried direct to the Tsar Alexander on the battlefield. Napoleon, who had moved up near the fighting in the center, witnessed the disaster with his own eyes. The corps, as it happened, too, was one he had taken an interest in. The 4th of the Line had been in favor with him, and he had appointed his brother Joseph as its colonel when the 4th was at the camp of Boulogne as part of the, quote, Army of England, end quote. He had, indeed, specially chosen that particular corps for its steadiness. He announced Joseph's appointment to it in a message to the Senate on April 18, 1804, in order that he should be allowed to contribute to the vengeance which the French people proposed to take for the violation of the treaty, and be afforded an opportunity of acquiring a fresh title to the esteem of the nation. In wild panic, the survivors of the disaster fled to the rear, tearing by close past where Napoleon and the staff were. Quote, "They almost rushed over us, and the Emperor himself," end quote, describes de Ségur, who as an aide-de-camp was close to the Emperor at the moment. Quote, "Our effort to arrest the rout was in vain. The unfortunate fellows were quite distracted with fear and would listen to nothing. In reply to our reproaches for so deserting the field of battle and their emperor, they shouted mechanically, 'Vive l'Empereur!' and they fled away faster than ever." Napoleon smiled pitifully. With a scornful gesture, he said to us, "Let him go." Retaining all his calmness in the midst of the confusion, he dispatched Rapp to bring up the cavalry of the Guard. So that is an account of what is presumed to be the first eagle lost by a Napoleonic unit. And it occurred in, of all battles, Austerlitz, which is considered to be Napoleon's masterpiece. Now, that's not to say it was perfect, flawless, an infallible thing. There were, as we'll get to in a second, 12,000 souls that died for Napoleon's expertise, military expertise there. And having said that, that brings us to another interesting tidbit as we segue into another aspect of the Austerlitz battle, which is the fabled, mythical, famed ice crossing by the Russians and the alleged breaking open of the ice such that numerous Russians drowned and froze. And there's a footnote in this book, in the same chapter, regarding that. And I'll read that to you, and then that'll conclude this video. It states it was to one of these retreating columns that the historic, quote, ice disaster, end quote, happened. Everyone knows the story as related to Napoleon's Austerlitz bulletin and mentioned also by Ségur, Marbeau, and Lejeune in their memoirs, how a column from the Russian left wing tried to escape over the frozen surface of the lake of Sachin, how Napoleon turned a battery on them while in the act of crossing the ice and broke it, and how thousands of Russians with their horses, guns, and wagons were seen slowly settling down into the depths, end quote. The actual facts are recorded in the recently discovered report of the, quote, Fischmeister, end quote, or overseer of the carp fishery of Sachin Lake, setting forth the results of draining off the water in the spring of 1806. There were found at the bottom, recorded the Fischmeister, 28 cannon, 150 dead horses, but only 3 human corpses. The column, it would appear, had been composed of 5 batteries of artillery, and when the ice was broken, the guns, all but the 2 nearest the shore, sank through and dragged the horses with them to the bottom. But the gunners, it would seem, were all able to scramble out, except the 3 unfortunates, who had been either hit by French round shot or were entangled in the harnesses of their teams. The loss of human life was therefore presumably only 3 men out of the 500 or so who must have been riding on or with the guns, and that is an interesting tidbit as relates to the ice disaster in the Battle of Austerlitz. So I thought I'd share those things with you. Apologize for most likely mispronouncing any number of names and places in this recount. Hope to have some more for you from this title, which again is The War Drama of the Eagles by Edward Fraser, published in 1912. A lot of good stuff in here, all accounts of the Eagles, etc. So, thank you for listening. If you guys have anything to add, correct, or any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll respond in kind. Talk to you next time.